Good morning, everyone. We're just going to take another minute or so to let people file in from the waiting room and join with the link, and then we'll get started. Okay, it is 11:01 Eastern, and so we're going to go ahead and get started, and people can continue to click on that link and join the webinar as it goes on. It's also recorded, and so this recording will be sent to everyone after the webinar. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Cameron Kelly. I am the Content Marketing Specialist at OSV, and I will be today's moderator. In just a couple of minutes, I'll introduce today's speaker, but first, a few housekeeping notes. To connect to audio through your computer speakers, please click the Join with Computer Audio button. To connect to audio through your phone, click the Call Me button, and you can follow the prompts to have Zoom dial your phone number. You may need to make adjustments on the volume. We also want to encourage you to ask questions for our Q&A session after the presentation. As we go through the slides, feel free to submit your questions as they occur to you. To ask a question, hover your mouse over the Zoom window to reveal the toolbar at the bottom and click on the Q&A icon. Type your question into the Q&A panel and click the Send button. You can choose to submit your questions anonymously. If there are any questions regarding Zoom troubleshooting or any technical issues, I will respond to those personally in the chat. And attendees can upvote a question by clicking the thumbs up button next to the question asked. We'll try to answer those upvoted questions first. And finally, at the end of the webinar, we do ask that you please complete our short survey. We want to make sure that these webinars are serving you so that you can, in turn, serve the church. So we welcome any feedback you can give us. There will be a QR code at the end, and it will show up in your browser as you exit the webinar. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today. Ray has spent the last 29 years working in Catholic parish fundraising, serving hundreds of parishes across the country with increased offertory programs, capital campaigns, feasibility studies, and pledge redemption programs. He has been part of the OSV team for the last 10 years and continues to serve the church and provide capital campaign solutions to dioceses and parishes across the country. Ray's home is in Hamden, Connecticut, where he resides with his wife, Denise, and their daughter, Caitlin. And now I'll turn it over to Ray.
Well, thank you, Cameron. First off, just want to thank everyone for being on the webinar today. We certainly appreciate your time, and hopefully you'll find this webinar beneficial and some good takeaways as you kind of work through things at your parish. But we certainly want to address a few issues. We'll have time, as Cameron said, at the end for some questions. If you're watching my videos as well as looking at the picture, you may have noticed there's a few less gray hairs on the picture than in reality. So maybe I'll have to get a new picture for my bio there. But really for today, what we're hoping to talk about is just looking at some major needs, some funding needs that parishes have. As Cameron said in my intro there, I've been working in Catholic parish fundraising for 30 years now, the last 10 with OSV. So I'm with parishes every day, with pastors every day, major donors, and really kind of, navigating these waters. And really what we're seeing is there's a lot of activity out there. I know there's some uncertainty in the times, no matter what side of the political aisle you reside, there's definitely some uncertainty, some concerns. But what we're really seeing is a lot of activity. There's a lot of parishes out there that are doing some, great work, raising major funds, doing a lot of really exciting things around their parish just to make the worship experience as good as it can be. Doing a lot in beautification to help evangelize, and really just taking care of what they currently have. So there's a lot really happening with this, and a lot of success stories. That in uncertain times, I think there's some trepidation as parishes kind of consider whether or not to move on a capital campaign. I speak with pastors all day, every day, and I know they have some concerns. And is this the right time? Are we asking too much of our parishioners? And these are things that we've been addressing, and we're seeing a lot of success. So I kind of want to share a few stories with you as we go through this. But what I want to kind of just start with is just kind of some diocesan interest in capital campaigns. That when I first started doing this 30 years ago, there wasn't really a tremendous amount of involvement. If a parish was looking to do a campaign and Father was in favor, they moved ahead and did a campaign, and that was kind of it. But things have changed, and I think really for the better. I mean, I think I have a little bit more oversight, a little bit more checks and balances. Having greater resources from the diocese is really helpful. And most dioceses have approved lists of vendors, contractors, architects. So they really are a resource. So you really want to kind of get them involved in this process as well. As parishes look at this, as pastors consider capital campaigns, the first step is normally to speak with their finance and parish councils. But the second step should really be, to get the diocese involved and, kind of get their input. And some of the things that the diocese, wants to consider is, what are realistic expectations? Just because a parish may have a need of several $1 million doesn't necessarily mean they have the capacity to raise that. And the diocese is pretty good at this. They'll be able to kind of, manage your expectations and what giving capacities are. Vendors, whether it be from a construction standpoint or to be from a fundraising standpoint, to really who have we worked with in the past, who has been successful in our diocese. OSV works across the country. I've probably worked in 30 dioceses. So certainly, it's something that we're accustomed to. But you want to make sure that you're working with folks that have that proven record and have been successful in the past. Setting up a strategy with best practices, what has worked in the past, what is kind of, how are things changing within Catholic parish fundraising. Certainly, you want your campaign to be stewardship based. Yes, it's fundraising. Yes, it's brick and mortar dollars and cents, but it should really be based in faith. Also, the diocese wants to be aware. They certainly want to be in know. They want to be part of the approval process. That you don't want to start a campaign and have the diocese come and say, well, you didn't do this or you haven't met this requirement. So you want to definitely get them involved early on. One of the things also the diocese looked at is affordability. Especially when you look at vendors like ourselves that do individual Catholic parish fundraising campaigns. Just a quick story. I'm going to tell a few stories as we go through this. I was doing a presentation about a year ago, and it was myself and several other, fundraising folks from different companies that do this type of work. And we were just chatting, having a cup of coffee before the presentation. And one of the gentlemen from one of the bigger fundraising companies that do this type of work was just talking about fees and things. And his mindset and his company's mindset was, for every $1 million that you need to raise, the parish should be spending $100,000 on their vendor, their fundraising vendor. And I was kind of blown away by that. I said, okay, so if you're having a $2 million campaign, you need to spend $200,000. And I don't think that's realistic. And as you approach this and you speak with the diocese and as you entertain, who might be the best fit, I would say, get a few different bids. Talk to a few different firms like ourselves and others just to see what might be the best fit. And I don't believe that, spending a couple $100,000 on a campaign is always necessary. In many cases, it isn't necessary. I don't want to speak for other companies, and I don't know all of the things that they provide, but that definitely seemed high in my estimation. Talk about the different design and print. One of the things that OSV does is really create a brand around your campaign. So we're not only your print provider, but also your consultant. The diocese is kind of the gatekeeper when you go through your approval process. And one of the things, and we'll talk about this in just a few moments, is there a mandate to do a feasibility study before a capital campaign? We're finding more and more dioceses are encouraging that, and many even mandating it. So that may be something that you want to take a look at. And, again, we'll touch on feasibility studies in just a moment. But one thing just to kind of mention is that in doing this for many years, not every campaign has a feasibility study. However, I've never had a client, a pastor, parish, that said that they were sorry they did the feasibility study, no matter what the results are. It's always good information. And also, the diocese wants to avoid, parishes going into debt. Don't take on more than you can actually do. And they do have a process in place in which, work cannot begin to a threshold of money, a threshold of pledges have been reached. So just got to make sure you're in the know of that. And also, the diocese understands that there's a lot of ask out there between, increased offertory programs, capital campaigns, bishops' annual appeals, CSAs, things of that nature. So we just want to make sure that we're being cognizant of that. Kind of, setting realistic expectations in a capital campaign. And this is something I'm a big proponent of, that you want to be realistic and set up, a campaign for success. As I said earlier, just because maybe there's a need of several $1 million doesn't mean that is what the capacity of the parish is. A really solid kind of walking around figure when you look at, what is our capacity in a capital campaign is 2 to 3 times your annual offertory. So to keep the math simple, if your offertory is $500,000, your annual offertory, you can probably raise between $1 and $1.5 million, and that's a really solid figure. There are outliers. I recently completed a campaign outside of just a suburb of a major city, and they actually raised in excess of 7 times their annual offertory. But that is the outlier. They were doing a major overhaul of the parish campus with new facilities, new church. This was kind of, the extraordinary, once in a, several generation type campaign. That will not be every campaign. So just think, looking at realistic expectations. And again, that 2 to 3 times, that's what we're seeing. That's post COVID. That is in campaigns that we're doing, right now. Typical cases, what are parishes doing campaigns for? We are right now, we are really seeing a lot of activity. As I said earlier, my phone is ringing constantly. Before this meeting, I was on with a pastor that I worked with at another parish. He had been transferred and he said, we need to do it again. So this is a pastor I'll end up working with, twice in less than 3 years at 2 different parishes. And again, kind of goes to that activity. But what are the typical cases? Upgrades, renovation, maintenance, repair. That's number one. That's what we're seeing really over the last 3 to 4 years. I hate to even say the word COVID any longer, but kind of our post-COVID world, that's what we're seeing. The majority of the campaigns that we're doing. We are certainly seeing some, debt campaigns, elimination, reduction. That's out there. And I think those are campaigns that kind of a lot of folks back away from, shy away from. They're not the cachet of perhaps a new building, but they're needed. They're necessary. And we do them all the time. We do them successfully. So if that is your case to eliminate or reduce the debt, you can do a campaign. You can be successful. It's a different kind of talk track. It's a different narrative. It's a different setup, but you can be really successful at that. We're certainly seeing the new building projects, land purchase, expansion of ministries and endowment. These are all realistic projects that are happening right now, but having a good case is certainly imperative, and being able to articulate the why this is a good case is imperative. And kind of circling back to the debt elimination, having that talk track, having that narrative be surrounded by here's why this is good. Here's what it will do for our parish. Here's what we're not doing now because we are so encumbered with debt. If we are to eliminate or reduce that, here's a list of the things that we can be doing. So really to kind of, talk about it in those ways will allow you to be successful. I think right now we're all challenged between, economy, gas prices, just instability. There's a lot of going on, and these are challenging times, and I don't back away from that. However, I know firsthand you can be successful. I was with a parish this week doing major donor receptions, and they were great. They were well received. People were excited. This particular parish is well on their way to goal in the early stages of the campaign. So we're seeing success out there, even with all of that kind of the noise that's out there from uncertain economy, fewer donors to bigger projects, competition from nonprofits. I mean, this environment has never been more competitive. Years ago, and use myself as an example, the overwhelming majority of my charitable giving was to my church. And my thought process was, I know they're going to do good things with it, so I might as well just give it to the church. And that's definitely kind of an old school mentality that, our millennials look at it differently. But I think you need to kind of have your message out there and invite people to participate. And one of the things that I've kind of gotten away from is the word ask. Hey, we're asking for money. We're inviting. And I think that's what it is. It's an invitation to be part of the parish, an invitation to be part of the future of the parish, the invitation to make our parish better for everyone, all of our parishioners, and hopefully new families as we join. Some other things, increase in costs, whether it be from the vendor that's assisting you on the campaign, construction costs, these are all real things. And one of the things that we really hear a lot with this is, well, can't do it now. Inflation and construction costs are very high. Labor costs are very high. We can't do it now. Well, I really don't understand, where's the guarantee that those are ever going to go down? And one of the things that we hear all the time is this the right time, or this is not the right time to do a campaign? It's never the perfect time. The economy is never perfect for everyone. So really, when you're looking at this, when the need is there, it's the time to do the campaign. I was meeting with a major donors in a different parish, and at the end of the reception that we had for the major donors, a couple came up to me and said, "Oh, this is so great. I'm so excited that we're addressing these projects. It should have been 10 years ago. I can't believe we waited this long." And I smiled and said, "Yes, sometimes it takes a while to get these things happening. But if the pastor said, well, this is a bad economy, or these are uncertain times, let's wait again, we could have been having this same conversation 5, 6 years down the road. And they already saw an increase in cost to do the projects. And this was a leaky roof, one of the main concerns that they had. And other problems, other issues have occurred because of that leaky roof that they kind of dealt with buckets in the church for many years. So don't delay, I guess, is really kind of the taking away from this, is even with all these challenging times, there's a lot of great things happening at our parishes across the country. Just some trends in religious giving. Post pandemic, things are looking better. Parishes that I speak with, the offertory is at or greater than what it was pre pandemic. So we're kind of got past that. Giving to religion is good, could be better. Giving to, secular things, is good, but it could be better. It's just more competitive. There's over 1 million 501c3s out there right now. So the competitiveness for those dollars are just extraordinary. There's so many requests out there, and there's so many different ways to give between, the GoFundMe pages that you see all the time. This is kind of, something that's fairly new, and it's competitive with what you're looking to do at your parish. So certainly that's something to keep in mind. I'm not a big social media guy, but occasionally I'll look at Facebook and actually see friends, acquaintances, family members that, during their birthday, they'll put out, hey, for my birthday, please support this. So again, that's competing for the dollars that are out there. So, certainly as you look at all these things, I would say don't back away from your needs. You need to present your needs. So as people look and say, what can I do with my charitable dollars this year? That you're on that list, that you're part of that agenda, that they don't lose sight of the church. Well, I didn't give to the church because they weren't inviting me to participate. I gave to these other things because there was that ask that was out there. So certainly you want to kind of be part of that and, really sharing the needs that you may have. One really quick slide on this, on this slide is, as far as generosity, it has never been greater. There has never been more charitable dollars out there than there is right now. However, it is coming from a smaller pool of people. So those who are generous are being more generous than ever. But that competitiveness has kind of, ebbed away from, where those dollars are coming from. So to kind of keep your parish out there and to keep informing people, it doesn't always have to be an ask, but there should be an information process, a communication of all the good things that are happening at your parish. That way, if and when you need to present an invitation to give, people say, well, I realize that we're doing all of these wonderful things. And I think that's, an area which many parishes kind of, lose sight of that. And I think a lot of parishioners just don't know, or, choose maybe not to know all the great things that are happening at the parish. So, don't be afraid to, take a bow. I know, we don't want to be vain, but let your parishioners know all the great things that are happening at your parish. And if you think you've told them enough, I would say tell them 10 more times, because, it takes that repetitiveness to really reach everyone. Kind of our experience, I'm out there in the field all day, every day, speaking with pastors, parishioners, major donors, and, really, face to face, virtually, phone, all of that. And, kind of our experience today, we're seeing parishes plan for projects, big and small. And as I said earlier, kind of that maintenance, the repair, the upkeep, that's the majority of what we're seeing. And people are really responsive to that, that say, hey, we've got these facilities, we've got this wonderful church, maybe it needs a little bit of work, it needs a little bit of paint, it needs a new roof. People understand that, and many of us do that with our homes. Every now and again, you have to spruce up. And it's the same thing with our parishes, just on a grander scale. If you need to put a roof on a church, it's a big project. Parking lots, I can't tell you how many parking lot campaigns I've done, and it's extraordinary cost when you look at the size of some of the lots that our parishes have. So, these things are happening. Parishes are getting, creative with campaigns and creative with ways to give. We're seeing more and more folks utilize stocks and bonds as a way to give. If you're at a certain age threshold, to utilize mandatory distribution from a 401k or an IRA account. That comes up all the time. I'm speaking with donors about that, really on a daily basis. So that's something that you want to present as another way to be generous to your parish. Just a quick little sidebar on that is just make sure that as you're speaking with, your donors and they're considering this, just make sure that they're speaking with their financial planner or plan provider. It's easy to do, but you want to make sure the steps are done correctly, that, any check going directly to the parish and not to the individual. If it goes to the individual, that tax benefit goes away. So just make sure that you're kind of speaking with them, setting up that right, and, kind of utilizing the inherent professionals that are involved with those processes. So, using tools and resources necessary, parishes are reaching goal, but again, set a realistic goal. That 2 to 3 times, I can't mention that enough. That is realistic. That's where you kind of want to live. That's a strike zone that you want to be in. Doing a feasibility study may adjust that, but I wouldn't get too, far beyond that. Kind of where do we go from here? There's some things that, just work and have worked forever. We're looking, we definitely see some creativity, but here's some things that you definitely want to focus on. Define the goals. Ambiguity is the enemy of any campaign. If people are uncertain as to what the work is, what you're looking to do, what their role in the campaign is, if they're uncertain, largely they will not participate. If there's any ambiguity, any confusion, that will derail your campaign in a heartbeat. Assess the feasibility study. Feasibility. Is this something that is realistic for our parish? Is this something that the parishioners want? A compelling case. This is so vitally important that, the case is something that people see that need. Show the impact. Don't just say, hey, we're going to do this. Say, we're going to do this because it will enable the parish to do these things. And that's where you can kind of, circle back and be very program centric and mission centric. If we fix the parish hall and put it in good repair, we will now be able to have Bible study. We will now be able to have, the women's group. We will now be able to have, these activities that we're not doing now because our parish hall is not in good repair. So to be impactful on that, cultivating donors, relationships, diverse funding methods, engage volunteers, technology can be great. It really can be a great way to kind of, get more folks involved. And certainly, I think more people, even older folks, are kind of embracing a lot of technology. And it's just, kind of spend a moment on this. One of the things that you want to embrace with that technology is electronic giving. As you embark on a campaign, really make sure that, that electronic giving is a component of that. And not just to say, oh, by the way, we have electronic giving, to really focus on that as a preferred method of redeeming a pledge. Not everyone will be comfortable with the technology, but that's okay. But those that are, you really want them to consider that. So I just want to kind of make mention of that. Recognize and appreciate donors. The thank you letter, imperative, absolutely imperative that thank you letters be done. And communication, that in most of the campaigns that we're doing now, we're utilizing a 3-year pledge redemption period. Um, don't go dark during those 3 years. Don't say, hey, we raised enough money to do the projects. They'll get done when they get done. I don't need to speak with my donors, till the campaign's over, till the redemption's over. Talk to them. You absolutely have to talk to them. Let them know that their money's being utilized for the projects in which they donated for. Communication is key. Golden rule, and I think we've really gotten better as this, as a Catholic community, the transparency. I think there's definitely that does exist, thoroughness and teamwork. But just on the transparency, again, I think I mentioned that if you've told them 10 times, tell them 11 and 12 times. Quick story: I was with a parish a couple of weeks back, and this parish had really done their due diligence in announcing what the campaign was for. They spent 2 years doing town halls, listening sessions. They did a feasibility study with our Sunday visitor, us. So the messaging was out there. And when we did the feasibility study, we actually paused for 6 months and said, hey, we need to do a few more listening sessions. We need to share what we learned in the feasibility study before we embarked on the campaign. Terrific. Worked great. So I was with Father, and we were doing major donor receptions a few weeks back, and Father was shaking like a leaf. And I said, Father, are you okay? And this was after our first reception. He said, I can preach in front of 1,000 people, and I'm great, but kind of inviting them to participate financially is not my strength. And he was, like I said, he was really, really, really nervous, but he did great. And at the end of this, a gentleman came up to me, and he said, I'm a little disappointed. I said, okay, sir, what are you disappointed about? I can't believe I'm first hearing about this right now. And, in my mind, it's like, they've been talking about this for 2 years. I was just so grateful that Father was not part of that conversation. So I really think he would have broken down into tears. But again, it goes back to, they have really, this parish so did their due diligence in informing. Yet the first person that came up to me after the presentation was, I'm just for hearing about this for the first time. So, kind of that teamwork, that thoroughness, and that transparency. You got to keep doing it. And if you think you've done it enough, keep going. Some of the next steps as you look at a campaign and say, can we do it? Is this the right time? How do we start? Kind of look at, services like OSV provides. We're not the only, shop in town, so to speak. There are others that do this. Everybody has a little bit of a different approach. Some firms have an approach of, they actually put somebody at your parish for a number of weeks, 8, 10, 12 weeks or more, depending on the size of the parish. We have a little bit more of a flexible model. We've kind of embraced technology that, our on-site director, and that's a role that, that's kind of what I do, is to be there during campaigns on site. I think I've mentioned several times when I talk about major donors that, I was there and present during this campaign. But we're there when you need us to be there on site, but we utilize technology for a lot of different meetings as well. And that really what enables us to do is to be there even when we're not physically present. And there's a great cost efficiency to doing it that way. So if you're looking to embark on a campaign, definitely look at a few different vendors. There's different approaches out there. We'd be happy to speak with you about ours. But you want to contrast that against others to find what might be the best fit for you. Some missteps to avoid. I talked about this parish that had waited many years to embark on their campaign to address really projects that were needed for quite some time. The longer you wait, the harder it is to get people on board. And I can't tell you how many times that I've been with finance councils, parish councils, and say, "Oh, we're finally going to address the parish hall." And the comments that follow are, "We've been talking about that for years. Nothing ever happens. Therefore, we can't do it." And that mentality can be pervasive, that someone says, "Oh, we've talked about it for years. Nothing's ever happened, so we can't do it now." And you don't really want to have that defeatist attitude of, "Well, we've sat on it for so long, it's not even a realistic thing any longer." So don't wait too long. But you want to give enough time to plan. It's a little bit of a balance there, that you want to have your ducks in a row, and you want to be able to articulate a good plan, a good strategy, and really show people that you've done the due diligence, the thoughtfulness has gone into this, so you can be successful. And you always want to avoid, it's only about the money, and really to share from a program centric standpoint, a mission centric standpoint, what this money, what this work will allow the parish to do. And that's what people get excited about. I mean, it's one thing to have, wonderful facilities, but, to really talk about all the good work that's happening within those walls and underneath that roof that you just fixed. Just some of the things, with a successful campaign, it's the opposite of begging. I think when pastors embark on campaigns, the first thing they want to do is apologize. Say, "I'm really sorry, folks, that we have to do this, but please don't ever apologize for your request. You're looking to do this for the betterment of the parish. And ultimately, that will result in, greater worship experience for your parishioners, greater evangelization, greater programs." So, it's not something that you need to apologize for. It's about really, proclaiming what you believe in, and really articulating, what this will do. It's an investment, in their parish, in their future, and really for generations to come. In many instances, as an older person, when I joined my parish, it was in great repair. And I think it's incumbent upon me to ensure it can be in as good or better repair as it's passed on to the next generation. What's most important, and we kind of highlighted there, know you can succeed, and I think that is important. But all these are important. Having a realistic goal, digital capabilities to kind of meet people where they live, and be able to share information with them that way. We do a lot of print, and we do a lot of direct mail, and that's great. But you want to be able to have that digital capabilities as well. Donor recognition, cost of the projects. Again, know you can succeed. Set yourself up for success. A compelling case statement, super important to have people understand why we're looking to do this and how everyone will benefit. An influential campaign chairperson. One of the things I heard early on in my career is, the campaign chairperson has to be somebody of affluence and influence. And I no longer believe that. I no longer believe it has to be somebody of affluence. Certainly somebody of a positive influence. That is important, but I don't believe in that affluence any longer. And one of the things that I hear all the time is, "Well, we've got this person. They're a great public speaker. They'll be a terrific campaign chairperson." Terrific. Well, what mass do they go to? Well, they don't come to church. Oh, what ministries are they involved in? Well, none. I'd rather have somebody that trips over their words, but is passionate about their parish. And that's really what kind of wins the day, is having passionate people surrounding the campaign and being your volunteers. Well-defined goals and objectives, planning for success. One of the things that you always want to kind of consider as you move into this is, how much can you raise? What is the capacity of the parish? Do the parishioners support us? And really, what I mean by that is, do they support the projects? Do they look at the leadership of the parish and feel as though it's in good hands? If people are not comfortable with the leadership, or don't know the leadership, or have not, seen success from parish leadership, it's going to hold back their giving, and it's going to make it a more difficult process. Are they ready? Are you ready for the campaign? Do you have the information needed? Have you met with architects and gotten costs? Do you have plans that you could share? A lot of this is kind of dependent upon what your case is, but to be able to really present a cohesive plan of what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what it's going to look like. Lining up major donors, as we talked about, major donors being of such import. Are the major donors behind these projects? And again, we'll talk in just a minute quickly about a feasibility study, but speaking with your major donors, cultivating other donors is imperative. um, Issues that may come up, just really being engaged with your people. One of the things that a feasibility study could address, but also, having good dialogue with your parishioners. What are their concerns? What are the things that could derail the success of a campaign? What's happening in your community? And, me as a fundraiser, I will never have the intimate knowledge of your community that you have. Speaking with your folks, what are their concerns? That is something you definitely want to take a look at leading into a campaign. Should we take on this project? When you look at maintenance and repair, I don't think you have a choice in most instances. You need to have your facilities in good repair. But with looking at a building project, that may be something you need to take a little bit of a deeper dive on. Do you need a feasibility study? And this has kind of changed over the time that, years back, feasibility studies were done when it was a very complex case or a very high goal. And that's the only time you did them. Do you need them for smaller projects? It depends. Depends on what the goal is. A lot of the campaigns that we're doing right now, I said, are maintenance. But if the roof is leaking and there's giant potholes in the parking lot, I think you have to start in, is a feasibility study necessary? I don't know, maybe, maybe not. But I look at it as an individual conversation with every parish that we should undertake. One thing that I just want to mention too is we're seeing more and more dioceses that are encouraging feasibility studies and many that are mandating them prior to the start of the campaign, regardless of the scope of the project, regardless of the cost of the project. So again, kind of going back and keeping the diocese in the loop, letting them know what's going on, and they will be happy to share that information with you. But you just want to be strategic. If the diocese does require the feasibility study, make sure you're getting that done, getting your approval on that, sharing results of the feasibility study before you embark on the campaign. Um, you know, is there a clear and thorough internal assessment? And definitely, being focusing on the needs. Big projects, you want to test the waters. You want to look at the feasibility study. Looking at a feasibility study, it's not about the money. I'd probably prefer if it's not only about the money. Money is certainly part of it, but you want to be cultivating donors. You want to be engaging people. Engaged parishioners are those that are going to be really the most generous into a campaign. And when I do feasibility studies, one of the questions we always ask is, tell me about the ministries and programs that you're engaged in. And if people spend 10 minutes telling me about all the things that they're involved in, I know they're going to be a big supporter of the campaign. If someone says, well, I go to mass from 9 to 10 on Sunday and then I don't really do much the next Sunday, I'm more concerned about that. So that engagement is certainly there. Having motivated people and, ready to, a ready path to success, letting people know that, here's what we did to get to the point that we feel that we're ready to be embarking on the campaign, and share that story. Here's where we started from. Here's the things that we looked at. And this is why we think this is the best plan. We do have a survey. I'm going to leave that up there so you can fill that out. But I'm going to kind of turn it back to Cameron for questions and answers. I apologize. I went a little bit longer than I was hoping to, but I just get excited when I speak about the campaigns and sharing experiences and stories kind of from the field. So, certainly you could fill out that survey. But let me turn it back to Cameron for any questions that you may have.
Right. Thank you so much. We are very grateful for your expertise here and for the information that you've shared with us. We will begin the Q&A session. You can still submit those questions in the Q&A panel in your Zoom toolbar. I see a couple of you have sent me a chat as well, which is also fine. Um, if you are interested in learning more about OSV, you can indicate that on your survey. So we do have a couple questions here for you, Ray. Our first one is, do we still have time to run a capital campaign this fall? It's already May.
Yeah, that's a great question. As I kind of talked about earlier, I was on a call with a pastor just before this webinar, and they're looking to start in the fall. And what I had told this pastor is, yes, absolutely, but I wouldn't delay. I wouldn't say, okay, we want to do a campaign in the fall. We'll start looking at things in August. If you're looking at doing a campaign in the fall, you want to be really have start to have those conversations, right now, because you want to be able to, have the time to put together materials and to do them in a really professional way. That takes time. We would certainly work with you on that, but we want to give it its time.
Great, thank you. Another question here. How do you navigate the parish having a campaign and the school having multiple events to raise money throughout the year?
Yeah, I mean that certainly exists. When you look at parishes with schools, there's multiple fundraisers throughout the year. And as a parent of a child that did go to Catholic school, we navigated that as well. So I think, really, as you're looking at that, the campaign can exist with, other fundraisers. Many of the fundraisers at schools are annual events, so people are expecting them. So it's not a big surprise, but really be able to present the case as, we're doing a capital campaign because these needs are so great that they can't be paid for during normal fundraising activities, whether it be the plant sales, the Christmas wrap, things like that. This is a time in which we need to have a dedicated campaign to fund some major projects that just can't be paid for out of some of these other smaller events. So they can still coexist, but I think you need to kind of change the focus during the campaign to let them know that this is the most important thing for this particular year, and these other events will continue.
Great. Another one here is needing an enhanced giving and a capital campaign not viable.
Yeah, I think just to make sure I'm understanding the question correctly is doing an increased offertory program and a capital campaign simultaneous. Is that something that you want to do? And the answer is no. Um, you know, if you have both needs to increase your offertory and capital needs, I would always encourage that you do the offertory enhancement, increased offertory program first, and then 6 months to a year, you can embark on the capital campaign. To do them simultaneously will confuse people. And as we said earlier, confusion, ambiguity, really holds back donations. So I would say you want to separate them. And if you're not meeting your operational expenses, certainly embrace the offertory program first, and then the capital campaign, shortly down the road.
Thank you. We have another one. We have a small parish. Is it actually possible for us to reach a campaign goal?
Yeah, definitely. I think sometimes parishes say, "Oh, we're the small parish. We'll never be able to do it." I've done campaigns with parishes, five, six, 7,000 registered households, but I've done parishes campaigns with 2 or 250 registered households, and they can be successful. Just finished a campaign about 3 years ago with a parish down south, and it went great. And right now, they're a growing parish, and their numbers have increased since we did the campaign. And they're doing right now a campaign just for new donors. They had so many new donors. They said, "Hey, we want to share with them what has happened." So their numbers are bigger now, but they were a very, very small parish. They were successful, and now they're growing. So it definitely can be done. And if you have a small parish and you're concerned about whether this can or cannot be done, let us know. It's, be happy to speak with you and, kind of share what we offer, what we do, costs associated with it. Smaller parish. The good thing about it is, the fee for a campaign will be a lot less. So that's definitely something that we can, to work on and discuss with you.
This one says, is it a best practice to do increased offertory from the pulpit or through a mailer or both?
Definitely both. You never know what's going to be, the thing that moves people. I think messaging from the pulpit super important. I know a lot of pastors don't enjoy speaking about money and certainly don't love speaking about it from the pulpit. But it's something that, if there's a need, it's really a good way to kind of, let people know, and then support it with mailings. Also, if you do, flock note, email blasts, things like that. Um, you know, your website is certainly a tool that you want to utilize as well. So you want to kind of hit as many different avenues as you can. But a single letter or single pulpit talk, will not be enough. You really need to do multiple levels, and then looking at doing it a repetitive messaging over some time.
Great. Next question. How many volunteers generally are needed to run a campaign?
That's really incumbent upon the size of the parish. The greater the size of the parish, the greater the volunteerism. That you'll certainly need. We realize that the human resource of volunteerism, it's a finite number, and in many instances, we have people that are working folks, and their time is difficult. So we try to be very respectful of the volunteers' time. In most instances, if we had 10 to 12 to 15 volunteers, again, depending on the size of the parish, we can be very successful. And we are, again, respectful of volunteers' time. We try to keep the time that they spend on the campaign at minimum as possible, but having that parishioner to parishioner contact during a campaign is super important.
Wonderful. Is it possible to run bilingual campaigns?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're seeing more and more of that. And one of the things is, we're definitely seeing multicultural parishes. So we're seeing second languages in not only print, but certainly in presenting from the pulpit. If you're doing mass in multiple languages, we certainly want to present the messaging, the print materials in multiple languages. So we certainly do that. And we do have folks here at OSB that are bilingual. So if you're looking, specifically Spanish speaking, we definitely have some folks on hand and on staff that can assist and make sure that we're not just using, a Google Translate and saying, okay, this is what it came up with. Let's throw that in a brochure. Just make sure that we're capturing, the meaning of the words, and having somebody that's fluent, bilingually allows us to do that.
Great. We have two more here. They're kind of similar. What time of year is best for a campaign, and how long does it usually take?
hmm Yeah, as far as the time of the year, it really depends upon the parish. It tends to be kind of fall and the spring are the busiest months for campaigns, but occasionally, you'll have the summer campaign. If you're the parish on the lake or the parish on the shoreline and your numbers swell during the summer months, well, maybe that's the best time for you to do it. You also want to take a look into say, where is your bishop's annual appeal? Every diocese has them. And how does that fit into the campaign? Will it be rolled into the campaign? Do you want to have them separate? Do you want to put some spacing of time in between that and other things? So definitely take a look at that. And I'm sorry, Cameron, the second part of that question was?
How long does the campaign usually take?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, usually the active solicitation phase is about 3 months. But as far as redemption, the majority of the campaigns that we're doing now are utilizing a 3-year pledge redemption period. Occasionally, we're doing a 5-year redemption period, but it's really about 3 years of redemption. So as you look at the campaign, it would normally be about a 1 month gear up or planning process where we share ideas and integrate what the parish is looking to do for our materials, and then 3 months of active solicitation, and then 3 years of redemption.
Wonderful. Well, those were our last two questions there. So thank you very much, Ray. This does conclude our time together. Thank you, everyone, for attending. If you've not completed our survey, please take the time to do so in the browser as you exit. And then the survey link and the webinar recording will be emailed to you. So please keep an eye on your inboxes for that. Of course, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us and have a wonderful Thursday. Thank you, everyone.